Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles and I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. In just a little bit, our El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz and our San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera are going to be joining me to talk about a few different topics, including the layoffs happening on the other side of the Rio Grande that are already having an economic impact on this side of the border and the upcoming update to the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. But first, as always, we're going to start today's program by taking a look at what's trending across the border, starting with protesters across the U.S. are taking part in a nationwide strike on Friday to oppose the Trump administration's immigration crackdown in Minneapolis. The demonstrations are called No Work, No School, No Shopping, and they come almost a week after an intensive care nurse, Alex Preti, was killed while recording Border Patrol officers with his cell phone. Now, this protest you're seeing on your screen right now, this one took place in Minneapolis. Multiple businesses announced they would be closed during the blackout, while some schools canceled classes in anticipation of mass absences. Some students are planning walkouts, while others plan to gather in churches, courthouses, and cities' centers in solidarity. We even have some here in the Rio Grande Valley, which will bring you more coverage of those happening today, next week on Border Report Live. Governor Greg Abbott issued a statewide disaster declaration for the state of Texas aimed at preventing the New World screwworm fly from getting in the state. Now, Abbott was here in South Texas on Thursday, where he said the parasite poses a significant threat to livestock and wildlife. The screwworm fly has not been detected in Texas or anywhere in the United States yet. The first case has been reported in the northern Mexican border state of Tamaulipas. Now, to give you just a little context on how far away that is from us here in the Rio Grande Valley, it's about 225 miles. That's actually less distance than it is from here all the way to San Antonio, Texas, which is a drive a lot of people make on a very continual basis here in the Rio Grande Valley. Now, officials say its movement northward from Mexico has raised concerns about a possible infestation. The Texas cattle industry says if screwworms cross the border, it could devastate livestock and cost the industry, as we've discussed here on this program before, more than $2 billion in damages. The USDA is creating a multi-million-dollar sterile production facility in Edinburg, Texas, which is about 35 miles up the road from here in Harlingen. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum and U.S. President Donald Trump spoke over the phone on Thursday about the arrest of a former Olympic snowboarder. Now, the debate is over whether accused drug trafficker and Canadian fugitive Ryan Wedding turned himself in or was detained in a joint binational operation on Mexican soil. Sheinbaum has constantly invoked Mexican sovereignty as the U.S. has sought to take more aggressive military action towards criminals in the Latin American nation. At her press conference on Thursday, she said that operations on Mexican soil are always carried out by Mexican forces. Former CNN anchor Don Lemon was arrested by federal authorities in Los Angeles late Thursday night in connection with an anti-immigration protest at a Minnesota church. Lemon, who is now an independent journalist and a critic of President Trump, had drawn scrutiny from the administration in recent days over his coverage of anti-immigration enforcement protests at a church in Minnesota. The January 18th protest at City's Church in St. Paul increased tensions between residents and federal officials. The arrest came after a magistrate judge last week rejected prosecutors' initial bid to charge the journalist. Lemon was in Los Angeles covering the Grammy Awards. His lawyer said, quote, "The First Amendment exists to protect journalists whose role it is to shine light on the truth and hold those in power accountable," end quote. And that's a look at what's trending across the border. Don't forget, you can always stay up to date on these and all stories impacting the border on BorderReport.com. Time now to bring in our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, and San Diego correspondent, Salvador Rivera. We're going to talk about a few different topics today, especially economic impacts that things happening on the other side of the border could have. But first, I wanted to start with you, Sal. Tell us what the latest is on the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement.
Well, Rudy, before I get into that, if you don't mind, I would like to offer some perspective, some history behind it. This all started with the North American Free Trade Agreement under George Bush Sr. It was ratified by Bill Clinton, and it seemed to be going very, very well until President Trump, during his first administration, decided to tear it up. Now, this agreement is supposed to be, for the most part, all about free trade. true capitalism, not a lot of tariffs. It does a lot for some tariffs, but for the most part, very minimal use of tariffs. It also generates about $2 trillion for the North American countries per year. So it's a big deal. A lot of trade, a lot of goods, a lot of good that comes out of it, and certainly fuels the U.S. economy. But this, as we talked about, President Trump decided when he took office last year that he wanted it redone. He was very critical of the pact in spite of the fact that he was the one behind it. So he started implemented tariffs as a way, as he said, to cut down on immigration and drugs coming into the U.S. So he started implementing tariffs on steel, on aluminum, on copper, and many other products, lumber. For Texas and both Mexico, they were retaliatory tariffs. So it's been at a conflict ever since. Now, as of July 1st, and the way it was written in the original agreement, it was that come 2026, the pact could be renegotiated. And on July 1st, all three countries have to say, hey, well, we want to keep going. We want to stay. We can negotiate here and there, or we want to leave, which is something that President Trump has said that he is willing to leave this compact unless it is negotiated and the United States gets a better deal. Now, Mexico and Mexico and the U.S. have started preliminary conversations. We heard from Mexico's Economy Secretary, Marcelo Ebrard. He was saying that they're already talking, setting the groundwork for negotiations. He said that the United States wants 54 changes made to the trade agreement. Mexico has said it wants to do 12. We don't really know what Canada wants. It has not been a part of this preliminary investigations. Now, according to Oxford University, there are three very likely scenarios. The one, and perhaps the strongest, is that most of the tariffs will go away. There'll be some negotiation, and all three countries keep going. The second one is that one country, likely the U.S., will bail out, and then everybody for themselves, Canada and Mexico, could keep going with their own formal agreement. The third option, or the likely scenario, is that we carry on with the status quo, the things as they are right now. We keep going, and all tariffs are terminated. Of course, that will be determined again on July 1st when the three countries will decide what they want to do. They have to provide a formal presentation, formal in writing, as to what they want to keep doing. Now, the biggest clients for the U.S., and because of the USMCA, the biggest clients for U.S. products are Mexico and Canada. The biggest investors in the United States are Mexico and Canada. So that's why this compact is so vital in North America and very important to the United States. That's why Mexico, Canada are saying, and many economists are saying, we've got to keep this going. We can't let it go. We can't let it expire and not get any benefit out of it. So this negotiations, if they do begin, they ramp up as of July 1st, everything will be renegotiated. They got to talk about pork and soybeans and corn, how much of it can go back and forth. Mm-hmm. They're also talking about other stuff that was not around 6 years ago, like artificial intelligence. How much will be allowed to be used in all three countries? How much will it be allowed to cross borders back and forth? There's also things such as biocorn. Mexico for years have said it does not want it, but the U.S. is going to try to push this technology, this biocorn, which is manufactured in a laboratory, wants to send it into Mexico, but Mexico has got to decide, and Canada, how much of it is willing to consume and to purchase. And again, all of this will be renegotiated if it does come to that as of July 1st. We're talking autos, produce, liquor, everything, including things such as AI technology, Rudy, which we just mentioned, that will have to be negotiated, talked about, and decided upon.
You know, it's really interesting that you mentioned automobiles, only because we just saw some video there, President Trump at the Ford factory. I think it was 2 weeks ago, just before the Detroit Auto Show leading up to that. And one of the things that he's recently said, I think in just the last 48 hours, is threats on Canada with more tariffs if they continue to do business with China, which if you follow anything happening, anything happening with Canada and China, they've recently signed an agreement to allow the Chinese electric vehicle maker BYD actually import cars or export cars to Canada, and for Canada to start selling some of those cars. And at first, it didn't seem like it was a very big deal to President Trump, but over the last, like I said, 48 hours, he seems to be speaking more on that subject. It's also interesting, kind of going hand in hand with what you were saying about the U.S. and Mexico kind of already at the negotiating table, with Canada being left out of that. So it'll be interesting to see. But going back to, the things happening on both sides of the border, and how the USMCA and NAFTA before that had all three countries working hand in hand. Julian, you have some reporting on some layoffs that are happening across the border in some of the maquiladoras.
Yes, Rudy. Before we get into that, I'd just like to add to Sal's excellent presentation that there is a lot of posturing going on the part of the U.S. as far as threats not to renegotiate the treaty, and threats of more tariffs. But actions speak louder than words. And the fact is that Mexican Finance Secretary Ebrard just a couple of days ago met with the U.S. Trade Representative in Washington, like Sal says, to lay the groundwork to advance the negotiations on the revised treaty before they even begin. So there's a lot of action between Mexico and the U.S. And the underlying message that Mexico is getting from Washington, from Trump specifically, is don't allow third countries to somehow sneak into the benefits of the treaty, specifically China. Mm-hmm. They're going to be discussing what is known as the rules of origin, which is how much content from our partner nation goes into the products that we manufacture and that we trade with each other. And there has always been some concern from the U.S. as how much of that Chinese influence goes into the Mexican products. And now it appears the Canadian products. As far as the tariffs, we have seen that they are a tool of government that President Trump uses. So regardless of whether a new treaty is signed or not, I think for the next 3 years that remain in his presidency, unless the Supreme Court rules those tariffs unconstitutional and the purview of Congress exclusively, we can continue to see threats of tariffs, new USMCA or not.
Well, it was interesting. Sorry, going, kind of staying on the subject here for just one more moment. What you were just saying about the country of origin, where a lot of parts, we are actually learning that here in the United States. A lot of businesses learning that it's not really true when they say made in America, because so many of the items that they require to build products here and sell them and still label them as made in America have been kind of impacted by those tariffs on China over the last year by President Trump. So I just wanted to kind of add that note too, that it's kind of happening here in the States as well. Absolutely.
China is the threat that President Trump continues to refer to, and they want to make sure that it is excluded from North American trade when we talk about the rules of origin and what products, what components shouldn't be taxed.
Sorry to interrupt you there again, but going back to the economic impact a lot of these things, including those tariffs, are having, what can you tell us about these layoffs that are happening right on the other side of the Rio Grande?
Yes, Ray, we have a developing story both here in El Paso, Juarez, as well as in Brownsville, Matamoros. And that is at a very large automotive components factory called First Brands, which operates several assembly operations in those two Mexican border cities, has all of a sudden announced layoffs. And this has brought a lot of concern here in Juarez and over there in Brownsville, Matamoros. Workers are actually camping out at the plants because they are concerned, well, did I just lose my job? Am I going to get severance? And this has to do not so much with components or the treaty, but it has to do with the economics of the business itself. That is what the president of Mexico said just a couple of days ago, when she specifically was asked about the situation and what this meant for the Mexican economy, for the local economy, for the workers impacted. We have some images of the campsite that the workers have erected at the plant. I don't know if we can play it.
think we're having a slight technical difficulty, but if we can get that video, we'll pull it up for you, Julian.
Okay.
But going, kind of tacking on what you said, that First Brands is actually, we found out overnight that they are laying off 41 employees at their Harlingen site as this all kind of unfolds. And that's in addition to another 88 employees being laid off, not just here on the border, but up in Arlington, Texas, outside of Dallas. What are folks saying on the other side of the border about all of this is happening for them?
Well, aside from the employees who, like I said, are very concerned and they have camped out at the plant, and we still don't know the exact number of people laid off south of the border. Information has been very slow and limited coming from the U.S. But what I'm told by Mexican industry leaders is that obviously this is going to hit the city economically because it's going to be possibly hundreds of people who are no longer going to have a job, a good paying job, I might add, who are not going to be shopping. But also they're saying that there's been a trend for the past couple of years, a major trend in the past couple of years of especially automotive maquiladoras or factories, U.S.-run factories, that have been cutting back on their workforce. And they cite a couple of economic factors for that. One is the high cost of labor. Labor costs have been increasing for the past few years, and they're expected to increase even more at the start of this year. Also, there are some concerns about tariffs, but believe it or not, what they're saying about tariffs, the Mexican industry, is that if the tariffs go away, they're going to see more maquiladora workers being laid off. Why? Because right now the tariffs, which are lower on Mexico than they are on other countries in Asia and Central America, they're actually keeping the labor force here. If the tariffs go away in Central America, South America, Asia, then there's nothing stopping companies from seeking even cheaper labor in those places. Sal, I think you had a question?
I just wanted to add, this is something that we talked about a couple of days ago. Here in Tijuana, where there's a heavy presence of maquiladoras, we were also seeing layoffs. In fact, last year, 30,000 people lost their jobs because of the tariffs and the uncertainty that surrounds the implementation of tariffs. This ongoing threat by President Trump to put in the tariffs at any moment has certainly scared off a lot of people, scared off a lot of investments. According to industry officials in the construction industry, they were saying that they are seeing a lot of investment drying up. There's no money coming in for projects. In fact, construction for warehouses, for maquiladoras, is down by 40%. We're also hearing that a lot of projects that were already approved, already had the financing, all of a sudden are stopped because the money got pulled back. Banks and other people don't want to invest. So there's a lot of uncertainty. A lot of people are already feeling the pinch because of these tariffs, because of what's going on here in the border region. But in terms of layoffs, as we talked about, 30,000 people are now out of a job in Tijuana because of the tariffs, what's going on. And like Julian said, there's a lot of people, not all of them for sure, but some of these people were definitely across the border to buy goods and services. Now those folks aren't going to be spending their money north of the border.
That's 30,000 workers approximately in Tijuana. Well, here in Juarez, they have lost 67,000 jobs in the past 2 years since late 2023. And again, that was before Trump and then after Trump. So it is possibly a combination of the high labor cost, an increase in automation, which is another development that's happening worldwide. There's a lot more automation going on in the maquiladoras on the Mexican side. And that means they're becoming more efficient. They need less labor. So that is another factor that is causing people to lose their jobs.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. Stay with me, though. And those of you at home watching, stay with us as well. We're going to take a very quick break. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. And welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Wanted to bring in our San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera and our El Paso correspondent Julian Rezendes once again. And Julian, kind of switching gears, different topic, but kind of related, is you've got some new reporting on some scanner technology that Customs and Border Patrol will be using. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, Rudy. Back in 2021, the U.S. Congress gave a mandate to CBP, and that is by 2027, we want you to use non-intrusive inspection technology on every vehicle that comes across our borders. And non-intrusive technology basically means X-ray machines, and this is a far more efficient way of inspecting a vehicle than just the inspectors, the officers' instincts. This allows somebody at the building, at the port of entry, to see what's inside the metal, what's inside the fiberglass of each vehicle. In the case of automobiles, they are hoping to detect hidden compartments, perhaps being used to carry drugs. In the case of commercial trucks, what they wanted to see was in this load of produce, in this load of machinery, is there anything that doesn't look like it belongs there, such as bundles of drugs or even people? So there has been some progress because this type of inspections were minimal back in 2020, 2021. Only 2% of all passenger vehicles were inspected with X-rays, and only about 15%, 1/5, of the trucks, cargo trucks were. CBP last week gave a briefing to Congress of the progress it has made. And the numbers are not very encouraging so far. It has only increased up to 30% or 37% in some cases. Now, what's going to happen is that Customs pledge to increase these inspections to cover 2 out of every 5 passenger vehicles coming across the border. It says that it's meeting a lot of challenges, but it also has some other obstacles in the way, such as the size of the ports of entry themselves. If you're going to erect the pillars with the X-ray technology, where cars are going to be passing through, you need space. And some ports of entry don't have space. Here in El Paso, we have a couple that are pretty much inside the urban sprawl. You get out of the port of entry and you're in the city itself. There's businesses, there's commerces all over the place. So Customs is trying to go around that. And they told Congress, well, we're going to be, in some places, we're going to be speeding up the installation of this technology. In other places, we're going to work with vendors, see if they have some alternate technology. And if worse comes to worse, we're going to be using handheld scanners, pretty much portable X-ray machines, to have the officers do this manual scanning themselves. But the hope is that in maybe not by the end of this year, but in the next 2 to 3 years, to be able to comply with this mandate.
Yeah, and when you're talking about space for the equipment that goes in, I'm thinking about over in your area of responsibility in San Diego, Sal, the San Ysidro port of entry. I know we're running out of time here, but I know it's already kind of a tight situation out in places like that.
Mm-hmm. And it was remodeled just a few years ago, $1 billion remodel, and they're out of space too, like a lot of ports of entry, as Julian was saying. So they created this double booth, 2 cars at a time to be inspected, something that hasn't happened. But in reality, I can't really picture where all these scanners will be placed because of the lack of space.
Yeah, and I know here, like going to the commercial side down here in Brownsville, we have the Gateway International Bridge, which is in downtown Brownsville. You literally walk off the bridge and you're right there in downtown next to the university, about a block away from City Hall. It is already such a tight fit going through there that I don't know where they would put that equipment. But just down the road from that, we have the Veterans International Bridge, which is already kind of listed for an expansion project with Cameron County, the southernmost county in Texas. They're going to be receiving some federal funds to kind of expand and add some equipment there. But that is where most of the commercial traffic goes through, because there's just no way you're getting a tractor trailer through the International Bridge downtown. But unfortunately, gentlemen, that is all the time we have for today. I appreciate you both. We've been speaking to our San Diego correspondent, Salvador Rivera, and our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz, about border economics, essentially, today. So those of you at home, stay with us. We're going to be right back after a quick break. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles. Before we go, wanted to remind you to check out our partners at Political Power Ranker. It's a weekly show tracking the movers, shakers, and rule makers in American politics. Director of Political Content for our company, Chris Berg, and Director of Emerson College Polling, Spencer Kimball, break down who's up and who's down in the world of politics based on data. In this week's episode, they've got some new polling on the Senate race in the great state of Michigan. So make sure to check it out. You can find out more on Political Power Ranker at abc27.com or your local Nexstar station's website. That's going to do it for us today. For Julian Resendiz in El Paso, Salvador Rivera in San Diego, my name is Rudy Mireles here in Harlingen. We'll see you next time.